I wanted dessert after lunch today. I was expecting him to say no, but when he said he was craving an ice cream sundae, I just had to make him one since he doesn't have dessert a lot. I started by making my sprinkles and decided on blue, white, and purple ones. Set those aside to dry for at least 4 hours while I got started on making my ice cream. I combined milk, heavy cream, sugar, vanilla, a pinch of salt, heated that up on the stove, and tempered my egg yolks and some sugar before pouring that mixture back into my warmed milk and letting that come up to temperature. I strained that, let that cool to room temperature, and then popped that in the fridge while I got started on making my condensed milk for my hot fudge. I simmered some milk and sugar for about 45 minutes before straining it out and setting it aside while I chopped up some chocolate. Combined that with the condensed milk, let that melt on the stove before adding in a knob of butter, letting that get to know each other before pulling it off and jarring it. To go with his sundae, I decided to make a vanilla wafer since those are one of his favorites. You just need a little crunch with your sundae. So I combined all of my wet ingredients and gradually added in my flour mixture before scooping them onto a baking tray, pressing them down and baking them until golden brown. While those were cooling, I churned my ice cream for about 35 minutes before putting it in a little ceramic, popping that in the freezer and getting started on my whipped cream, which was basically just whipping heavy cream with a little bit of powdered sugar and vanilla. Then it was time to plate. I put down the vanilla ice cream, hot fudge, whipped cream, sprinkles, and vanilla wafer, and before I knew it, it was gone and he wanted a second one. Fruit roll-ups at the store. They've been asking for them. So today when they asked for a snack, I decided to just make them some. I decided to make 2 different kinds, one of them being mango pineapple and the other one being strawberry raspberry. I started by chopping up my mango and pineapple, adding that to a blender alongside some lime and brown sugar. I blended that up and set that aside. I moved on to cutting up my washed strawberries. I added them to my blender as well, found some raspberries in the fridge, and topped that off with a squeeze of lemon and some brown sugar as well. Since I didn't want any seeds in my fruit roll-ups, I strained my puree. Once it was all smooth, I poured it onto my baking tray, making sure to spread it out evenly, and repeated that with both of my purees. I set my oven to about 180 and let these bake for about 6 hours. And once they were all dried out, I transferred them to parchment paper, cut them in strips, and rolled them up. The kids couldn't wait any longer, so they started eating the red fruit roll-ups, so I didn't have a lot to work with. These were gone in less than 30 minutes. My parents are on a 10-hour flight over from Germany and they're about to land, so I decided to make them an early dinner for when they arrive at our house. Our friends brought us these potatoes from Idaho, so I thought it would be perfect making a duck fat roasted potato. I started by chopping them and boiling them while I got started on my maple roasted carrots. I cut my rainbow carrots in half and seasoned them with some olive oil, maple syrup, and some other spices. At this point, my potatoes were parboiled. I shook them up and transferred them over to a baking sheet with some hot duck fat before roasting them for about an hour in the oven. In the meantime, I got started on making a cilantro hummus and plated that before popping that in the fridge. Once that was set aside, I made my variation of a gremolata and added some green olives, dill, parsley, and also a red plum. Finally chopped my parsley and my dill before moving on to my olives and adding them to the plate. Last but not least, I also cut up my plum and added some olive oil, lemon juice, and some grated garlic to the mix. Seasoned with salt and pepper, gave that a good stir. By this point, my fish was ready to go in the oven, so I got started on the marinade, which was just some melted butter, some lemon juice, and a handful of other spices to go with the fish. Coated my fish in the marinade before putting it on a baking sheet and adding some tomatoes to roast as well. At this point, I was ready to plate, so I put my maple roasted carrots down on my cilantro hummus, topped my fish with some of the gremolata, but also put some extra on the side, plated my potatoes as well, and there we go, dinner was served. My dad loves a good potato while my mom loves a well-cooked fish, so this was perfect. You know those nights when it's 11 p.m. and all you can think about is fast food? I was laying in bed and got hit with this insane craving for some curly fries and chicken nuggets, so that's exactly what I got up to make. I spiralized my potatoes, soaked that in warm water and salt, and got started on my chicken nuggets. Cut up my chicken and marinated it in some pickle juice and buttermilk for about 45 minutes while I got started on my batter for my fries. I mixed my flour with a bunch of spices and salt, added some water, and once it hit the consistency I wanted, I tossed my spiralized potatoes in it. Got my oil ready to fry, and once it was hot enough, I dropped in my curly fries in batches. Let them cook for about 15 minutes, set them aside, repeated that with all 4 of my batches before sprinkling them with some salt. At this point, my chicken is ready, so I mixed some cornstarch flour, baking powder, salt, and a bunch of other spices, coated my chicken in it, and dropped it in the hot oil. I again did this in batches to make sure that all of them were cooked evenly. Once they were golden brown, I put them on my wire rack, and then it was time to plate. I also had some homemade ketchup that I added, and this hit the spot and was absolutely stunning. My dad just landed after an 8-hour flight from Germany and is heading over, so I decided to make us a quick spring dinner. Even though I don't eat cake, I knew my dad would love a good cake after a long flight, so I decided to make a blood orange upside down olive oil cake. I sliced my blood orange, boiled them in some sugar and water while I got started on my cake batter. And once all of my wet ingredients were mixed, I added in my flour, stirred it just to combine, put my candied blood orange down, topped it with the cake batter, and popped that in the oven for about 40 minutes while I got started on some duck fat potatoes. I roughly chopped some russet potatoes, put them in some water, and let them boil just until tender. Once they were done, I strained them, gave them a good shake to rough them up, before carefully pouring them into my skillet with hot duck fat, seasoning them and baking them for about an hour. I also made a garlic lemon zest compound butter that would go under my chicken skin. At this point, my cake was done and I brushed it with the syrup from earlier before setting that aside. There's nothing better to me than seasonal produce, so I made a quick salad with some fennel, watermelon, radish, snap peas, feta cheese, and some mint. I topped that with a lemon vinaigrette, and it was time to spatchcock my chicken. I took out the backbone, laid it flat, spread my compound butter all under the skin before topping it with some more seasoning and baking it for about an hour. In the meantime, I made a charred garlic chimichurri type sauce. I charred my garlics, topped up some scallion, cilantro, parsley, chili, topped that with some olive oil, vinegar, and a good pinch of salt, and then it was time to plate. My dad loved it and finished the cake before the night was